Okay, what was conscientious objector? Anybody?
The guy that went to Iraq and he saw people doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
Running civilians off the road. And he's like, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up to protect the country, not, give it away.
Yeah, he said some other values too. Why did he sign up to go over to Iraq?
Protect the country.
Protect the country. Okay, yeah, he's an American, protecting the country, good citizen. To serve his God, actually, he said. So there were religious reasons, there were patriotic reasons, there were democratic type reasons. There were a lot of reasons why he went. And when he went over there, he ended up finding that they were swiping off people with Humvees, they were shooting the livestock for sport, they were basically generally acting the fool, maybe even killing civilians sometimes. So what'd the guy do? The guy tried to quit. So he basically just did not show up when his leave was over, when he had come back to the United States. And he basically said what?
He can't go because he's a conscientious objector.
He's a conscientious objector, and a conscientious objector, Paul, is what?
I said against his religion.
Okay, against his religion. Here's the thing. He's basically saying that I went over there for God, for country, for democracy, for my president, all of these things. And he said, when I got over there, I found out that God and country and president and safety and all of these things weren't really what's going on. So if I went over there for one thing and something else is going on that's against my principles, I have the right to quit. Katie, does he have the right to quit? No. Why? Okay, yeah. Here's the thing with this. When you sign that military contract, there is a commitment that you're making, and it's a commitment to country, and you're committing yourself to do so. So he's saying, as a conscientious objector, I deserve to not have to go over there and do this. Army on the other side saying, whoa, you signed a contract. You are the terms of this contract. You're not going to be able to get out of this so easily. Now, I compared him to somebody else that was fairly notorious back in the day. Muhammad Ali. What was the difference between Muhammad Ali and our sergeant in this instance? What's that? Muhammad Ali was drafted to go over there. This guy voluntarily signed up. So when you think about this, when this guy voluntarily signed up, does it change around the circumstances of his enrollment?
Oh, yeah.
How so?
He wasn't forced into doing it.
Wasn't forced into doing anything. He wasn't doing anything against his will. So as such, his contract is going to be a little bit more valid. You can't just stop the army if you don't like it. Muhammad Ali's, on the other hand, was a little bit different because he was drafted. And ultimately, he won his case on the grounds of conscientious objector status, in part because of race, in part because of the Muslim. He had changed his faith, in part because he was an honorary, I forget exactly what the court called him, although not necessarily a legitimate religious figure, certainly an honorary one. They suspended his right to fight for his heavyweight title for a number of years in the prime of his career, but ultimately he got it back. This guy signed the contract, went over there voluntarily. He is going to have to fulfill that service. But in this instance, if I'm not mistaken, let me rephrase that. Not that he has to fulfill his service. He is going to be punished for having done this. Breaking the chain of command, breaking army rules, breaking the contract, as you said. We didn't really decide at that point what his term of punishment would be, but he is going to jail. Was he lied to when he went over there? Because we had an article dealing with...
No, but they do some strange things with the recruiting.
Yeah, can you remember some of those things?
People are coming back all the time.
The recruiter said, people are coming back all the time. They asked the recruiter, are we at war? Are we?
No.
Recruiter said, we're not at war. People are coming back all the time. And in fact, if you ever want to quit, you can whenever you want. Question, did the recruiter lie?
No.
Why?
Because you can quit.
You can quit. And what happens when you quit, Muhammad? He didn't say you're going to be subject to legal penalties, but you can quit at any time, although you're going to be punished. And are we at war?
No.
Not a declared war. And since it's not a declared war, then indeed, that's something that you could argue the recruiter was absolutely telling the truth. Are people coming back all the time?
Yep.
How?
Body bags.
They could be coming back in boxes, or they could be coming back as troop rotations. So with this in mind, when you play around with this a little bit, what you're going to end up seeing is they might not be telling the whole truth, but they are absolutely not telling a lie. And this was also one of the articles that we had covered. One of the articles. Does anybody have any other questions? We've been going for about an hour and a half, and I have about an hour and 15 minutes of this taped. Anything else that y'all can think of for the exam for tomorrow, or for Wednesday for many of you, and for Thursday for the rest? Go ahead.
Since we've asked you, what have we not covered that's on the exam?
I think that basically the only thing that's really left is to give a good read over of the articles. We haven't talked about the video game article, the Columbine. We haven't talked about Columbine Massacre. I would really give that one a good look. See, this final is going to be about examples. If y'all think that the test questions were interesting on the first two exams, y'all are going to be practicing all sorts of different religions. You're going to be dealing with all sorts of different freedom of speech issues. You're going to be dealing with any number of commercial speech issues. So when you think about it, we didn't talk about giving the finger as the bus driver. That's probably something that's going to come up somewhere. We haven't talked about the video game. There's a lot of First Amendment stuff here. Yes, go ahead, Rosa.
What's the blue law?
What's the who?
The blue law?
What was the blue law?
You can't like do certain stuff.
We mentioned this at the beginning. Blue laws are those laws from days gone by that basically say that there are certain conduct that you cannot perform on Sundays. And if you remember from that William Penn article, how did they term it? What was allowed and what wasn't?
They didn't allow the Jew guy to open the store.
They didn't allow the Jew guy to open the store. Okay, well, yeah, that was one example that we talked about. That's not exactly what the article said, though.
We talked about in
Well,
class last week?
What's that?
Was it like what we talked about in class?
We did.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what it is. How can you say
It's basically saying that if you're doing something that is worldly, if you're doing something for pleasure, like going hunting, for example, or stuff like this, that's forbidden. But if this was of necessity, if you were chopping wood, doing work chopping wood because you needed wood for the fire to keep the family warm, that would be allowed. But if you were doing something worldly or something for pleasure, that's not allowed if it was work related. So it ran through, and you mentioned hunting was allowed, but fishing wasn't. That's just it. The article basically said that some of these things are really arbitrary, and they didn't set up good classifications. They said that you could buy antique rugs, but you couldn't buy new rugs.
What about the cars?
They said in there that you could window shop for cars, but you could not discuss terms of payment. You could not buy a car on Sundays, but you could look and maybe even test drive one. So there's a lot of stuff in there. I would give the Blue Law article a nice read over. It goes back to William Penn, I believe, in the 1600s.